Hello again, my name is Lami Gidado. So this is the second video in a series. The first one I talked about the 10 benefits of play, and today I'm going to talk about play therapy, what play therapy is. So I'm a play therapist and I'm the president of the Association of Play Therapy in Nigeria. I've been practicing for 7 years now, but I've been working with children for over 20 years. And my dream to be a play therapist started long before I knew what play therapy was. So at the age of 13, I already knew what I wanted to do, but it had no name. I sort of started empathizing with children who were going through all kinds of trauma, probably because I had gone through trauma myself as a teenager. But when I grew up, I realized what it was, what the name was, and everything. So that sort of explains what play therapy is all about. Play therapy helps to give pictures where we don't have the words to express ourselves. Children do not have the logical thinking skills or the vocabulary to be able to express themselves. So they use objects, they use symbols, they use toys, they use play to express themselves. And that's what play therapy is all about and what I'm going to be talking about in this video. So what I want you to do now is, from my own toys, I want you to pick something that speaks to you. So you're going to see some of my own toys, and I want you to pick something, maybe one or two things that speak to you. You pick them and then we'll talk about that later. Okay, so I will come back to that. But it was Walt Disney that said that our greatest natural resource is the minds of our children. I want you to think about that for a moment. It means that if we do not do anything about a troubled mind now, what's going to become of that person as an adult? And so even as we concentrate so much on academic performance and other aspects of childhood, we also need to think about the minds of our children. And I love statistics because it just shows clearly what is going on. And one of the current statistics shows that 1 in 10 children have a mental health problem. And I believe that these numbers are even higher. Think about Israel, for example, and even in Nigeria. Think about the things that go on in Nigeria on a daily basis. So definitely these numbers will be higher. And this statistics is a worldwide figure. And amongst, in that category, more than 50% are boys, probably about 70% are boys. So there are more boys who have mental health issues than girls. And also another statistics shows that 50% of mental illnesses in adult life started in childhood. I think we need to really pay attention to some of these figures and what they mean. These include family and social relationship problems, anger management issues, attachment issues, which start from infancy, loss and bereavement. And in the society that we find ourselves in Nigeria, for example, people do not have the opportunity to grieve over their losses. I know that because I've had even adults in play therapy who have never had the opportunity to grieve over a loss. And I'm not just talking about death. I'm talking about even loss of relationships or even loss of something that is important to them. So we just move on, or we think that we have moved on. 1 in 5 children also suffer a psychosocial disorder. And again, like I said, it includes a diagnosable mental health problem. So the purpose of play therapy, especially in schools, is to help children to benefit in teaching. So when schools have play therapists, those children can reach their full potentials because we are alleviating their emotional and behavioral problems. The benefits in counseling and hospitals is for children to recover faster. Also, people who have benefited from play therapy in schools especially have said that they have seen that those children have, they learn to participate in group work, and it reduces absence from school, and also it also reduces exclusion from social groups especially. I want to talk about the benefit of play therapy to the brain. So what happens with play therapy or in play therapy is that it reduces the use of the survival part of the brain, and that is the amygdala. When someone has a trauma, when someone is suffering from an emotional or a behavioral problem, they are usually functioning in their survival brain, the amygdala. That's what, pushes them every day. But when they go through play therapy, they learn to activate the part of the brain that helps them to think, and that is the prefrontal cortex. So that takes over from the amygdala. So that's one of the simple ways I can explain what happens in the brain when children go through play therapy, and even adults. So it quietens the amygdala and it activates the prefrontal cortex and other parts of the brain. It also works on the hippocampus. So it's when we're able to reflect on our past experiences and think about our future. This is where they meet, and we sort of work on a preferred reality in that place. And then it also, during play, we also have a release of the feel-good hormones, so like oxytocin and dopamine and opioids. So then we are less aggressive, and we have this belief that everything in our world is going on well, right? So, and then we're able to learn, when that happens. So what is play therapy? Play therapy is a method of helping children with behavioral, mental, emotional, and learning difficulties to help themselves. It helps them to help themselves because it's, during a play therapy session, children are reflective. They're processing by themselves rather than a therapist telling them what to do. They reflect by themselves, they discover by themselves, so that it becomes a lifelong skill that they're learning. So even if children go back to that same situation, they have learned skills that help them to help themselves. So for example, I had a child who was verbally abused at home, and what he was doing in school was he was stealing, he had disruptive behavior and all kinds of behavior. And what the question the teachers and the principal kept asking me was, this child is going back to the same environment. But by the time I finished sessions with him, I did almost 40 sessions with him. He was telling me by himself what he was going to do in situations like that if he was going through the situation at home, how he would stay calm and walk away. So he was coming up with all the skills by himself. I never suggested those things to him. And the stealing also stopped, and the disruptive behavior also in school. So he learned all of those skills by himself through play. So it also works because it is the natural way for children to express themselves. It is important for child development. So children are able to express themselves through that. Earlier on, I asked you to pick something that speaks to you. You may feel like you just picked something randomly, but usually we pick something subconsciously that actually speaks to us about what we are going through. Or it may say something about our personality. It may say something about an experience that you've had. The first time I had to do an activity like that myself, I traveled to South Africa and I was extremely tired, but I had to go from the airport straight to the conference. and we were asked to pick something, and I picked a bed, and I thought I was just picking something. And it was after reflections, I realized I was extremely tired and I needed a bed. I needed to lie down, you know. And so if you think about it, if you start to really, really think about what you picked, you're going to realize that it has some meaning, you know. So I want to give you an example with this book. It's called Where the Wild Things Are. So in play therapy, we use different mediums. We use books as well. So I had a child who also was sent to me for unwanted behavior, both at home and in school. And everyone just thought that he was a naughty child. He was always getting into trouble. And he would come into my play therapy room and just scatter the room. He wasn't really doing anything much. But when he played in the sand, when he used sand, there was always a bad side and a good side. Always, every week. And so there's no way you can tell me that that is coincidence, you know. So he would pick maybe dogs and then cats. One side is the cats and then the other side is dogs. Or he would pick soldiers on one side and police on or thieves on the other side. So on and on he would go. But there was a day he picked this book and asked me to read it to him. And I read it. It's, you know, Where the Wild Things Are. So it's a story about a boy who was sent to his room for being naughty. And when he went to his room, he started to imagine that he had gone to the wild and he was where the wild things are. And this is one of the wild things, ugly and big and scary and just, you know, messy and everything. But it got to the point where in the story, he's having fun with them, but at the same time, the wild things thought that he was too wild for them. And then they sent him back to his room, you know. And week after week, he would come back and ask me to read this book. But when he was sent back to his room, he decided that it's not worth it being in that place. So he wanted to be where his mom was. And he went back downstairs. I don't remember if he apologized, but, you know, he made peace and everything. But eventually, after about 6 sessions of reading the same book, I got the report that he was no longer sent to his principal's office. He was behaving better and things were getting on better at home. So this is part of how play therapy works. So it was working on his subconscious mind and telling him how to behave, what is expected, and all of that. So there are therapeutic books involved. So I would tell you some of the techniques that we used and the books is one of them, right? So we use books, we use storytelling and story writing in play therapy. We use toys. So we use toys, we use sand. Children can use sand or clay. We use arts and then music, dance and movement, drama, and what we call creative imagination or creative visualization. Is sort of a guided imagery activity. So these are some of the things that we use. And we use this because different things work for different people, and each child is different, each individual is different, and books might work for one person and it may not work for another person. So a play therapist is highly skilled. It takes about 3 to 5 years to become a play therapist. It's about psychology. You know, it's a small part of psychology. And so a play therapist capitalizes on the therapeutic relationship between them and the child. That's one of the things that makes play therapy work. So a person begins to heal when they feel safe with someone else. So if I don't feel safe with you, I'm not going to open up and show you how I'm feeling, because you're going to assume that the child would think that all adults are the same. And in the society that we find ourselves, adults are to be feared. Adults are, children are just to be seen and not heard. So when I start play therapy with children, they are very skeptical about who I am and if they should open up. And that is one of the reasons why I have to have several sessions with them. The therapeutic relationship is important. So a play therapist is warm and friendly. A play therapist accepts the child as is. So whether it's a disruptive child, whatever presents in the child, the play therapist accepts the child as they are. And we also establish a feeling of permission. They're permitted to be themselves. They're permitted to come to the room and do whatever they want to do. So sometimes they come, and I've spent a lot of money on art supply, and they come and pour everything all together. It's okay. They're permitted to be themselves if that is what they need to do. Sometimes a child comes and throws all my toys on the floor, and it's okay. They may need to vent at that time, and they may be feeling dysregulated, and maybe that's the only opportunity they have to regulate. Also, we reflect back so that the child can have an insight. So whatever the child is doing, I'm just reflecting back and talking about what I'm seeing the child do. That way the child feels seen and heard. And in the play therapy room, the child is the leader. The child leads and the therapist follows, not the other way around. And the responsibility to make choices is the child's. There are very few limitations in the play therapy room. So very, very few rules. So they're just allowed to be themselves. Some of the rules that I give children is just to tell them that whatever we share here is confidential. So whatever you do here or you tell me is confidential. Even your parents, unless I have your permission, I'm not going to share these things with your parents, so that they feel safe, and then they begin to process what they're going through and to heal. So a play therapist is non-judgmental. No matter what the child tells me, I have to be non-judgmental. And that means that I put up a straight face most of the time, so that the child knows that I am not judging them. So it's non-judgmental, it's non-directive, and it's non-interpretative. So just because they share something with me, I don't, take on the role of the adults to say that I know what this means. It could mean something else. And even their play could mean something else from what I may be feeling. So another thing that happens in the play therapy room is that the energy that the child is projecting, also projects on me. They're projecting it onto me also. So I'm able to tell what a person is feeling or what they're processing from how I am feeling also. It may sound spooky, but that's how it is. That's how the brain works. So whatever I'm feeling is probably what the child is feeling, because they have projected their feelings on me. That's how play therapy is. Play therapy works for so many different things, and I'm sure you may be wondering, how can it work for children with learning disabilities and also work for children with emotional problems and mental health issues? All of these people usually have behavioral issues and emotional problems, and that's one of the reasons why it works for all. And if we're able to deal with these problems, if, for example, a child with a learning difficulty learns to advocate for themselves, because that's one of the things that we find lacking in children with learning disabilities, then you can imagine how their academics will also improve. I've had a lot of children with ADHD and autism especially, and they have learned to advocate for themselves. They have better self-esteem because of play therapy, and they just learn to believe in themselves and even in their abilities instead of concentrating on the disabilities. So play therapy works for people who have gone through abuse, anger issues, attachment issues, behavioral problems, bereavement, bullying, communication problems, and several other things like delayed development and many other things. Play therapy works for children from 0 to 19, but like I said, it also works for adults. I've had a lot of adults in play therapy, and I still do. In the past, it was believed that play therapy didn't work for children below the age of 3, but we're finding that that is not true. So I work with children of all ages and adults as well. So briefly, what I've done today is just to give you an overview of what play therapy is. It works on the subconscious mind. It's a method of helping people, children, young adults, and adults to help themselves. So that's what play therapy is. Thank you, and see you in the next video.